The Creative Psychotherapist is the official podcast of the Creative Clinicians Corner, a practice-building resource for creative psychotherapists. TCP Podcast is the cast for creative, expressive, and experiential-focused psychotherapists curious to learn how to design, build, and scale a thriving private practice. Your host, Raina Lombardi, interviews successful therapists about the tools and strategies they have used to develop creative-focused practices. They also talk about the products, services, and side hustles they have developed using their knowledge and creativity to enhance their therapy practices, make a greater impact in their communities, and diversify their income streams. Welcome. Now here's your host, Raina Lombardi.
I'd like to welcome Amie Thomas from AIM Counseling. And she's going to be speaking with us today from Bonita Springs, Florida, and talking about her practice. And she uses a strength-based approach to allow individuals, couples, and families to experience a safe environment in which to increase knowledge and awareness regarding emotions. She really emphasizes the role of psychoeducation as a key pillar in the work that she does at AIM Counseling. She believes that knowledge is power and a means in which to learn how to be more in control of the abstract experience of our emotions. Amie is a licensed mental health counselor and a certified trauma and loss specialist. She has experience working with children, teens, and adults to assist in rebuilding balance. She's been operating AIM Counseling, her private practice, since 2014. And prior to that, she worked in the nonprofit realm, specializing in the treatment of trauma. And she really believes in the creative process and infusing that in the work that she does with clients to help them increase self-understanding and finding their voice. And at her practice, her and her associates are trained and supervised to provide quality and effective mental health care. Welcome, Amie. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
So, what fueled you to leave the realm of nonprofit and go out and launch your own practice?
Since 2005, after I graduated from graduate school, I was in the nonprofit world at a few different settings and continuing to learn and grow, and recognizing in my own self of where that ceiling was for myself, where I've learned as much as I can learn, and I want to move forward into something new so I can expand on my skills. And so in 2014, I actually was just about to give birth to my son. And so it was one of those things where everything just kind of came together, and it just seemed like this was the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Just, of course, not knowing what the unknown of having a child and what that's going to look like and be like. So I put my resignation in, but it was a resignation, but it was such an amazing experience working in the Children's Advocacy Center in Lee County for the 7 years prior. That agency allowed me to grow as a professional and as a person, and I'm so thankful for my time working there. So it was a very bittersweet situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I know I needed a little bit more flexibility to be able to be the mom that I really wanted to. I wanted to be able to be as hands-on as I possibly could with my son, and I knew that flexibility was key, and so I wanted to be in charge of that. And so that was one of the biggest reasons that I moved over to private practice. However, I had two amazing colleagues that had ventured out before me, and that was saving me a spot. So I really, Heather Wynn and Jessica Carr, they are amazing clinicians, and it was a pleasure to be in the same space as them and to start to collaborate. And it kind of showed me the ropes a little bit and allowed me the space to do my own thing.
So you had some mentorship and support as you made that transition, which is always really helpful.
Yes.
And so when you first transitioned and your son was born, how did you structure that time? How were you able to make that work? And in a lot of ways, I think opening your own practice is a lot like raising a child in some ways. There's a birthing process that does happen. And I can't fathom holding both of those at the same time and doing all of that work at the same time.
I'm very blessed that I had a sense of naivety about what was about to happen, because if I had known, things might have been different. I remember going in for my 20-week ultrasound, and the ultrasound tech, she was asking me about my life and blah, blah, blah. And I told her what I was about to embark on. She's like, "You're going to start a business and have a baby?" I was like, "Yeah, why not?" But that has always stuck with me. Like, she knew it. But my son was born in March, and I opened up my doors May 10th. So it was about a 2-month process. There was some time before that I was able to start thinking about things.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that I started slowly. And so I have a very supportive husband. And so Saturdays were my days. And it was very good for me, because I had to totally let go of control as a mommy. And all right, it's all you. And he really rose to the occasion. And he has a wonderful relationship with our son. So I do see it as a blessing, because he had to jump in.
Mm-hmm.
Completely. And I would work a few afternoons, and he would come home early from work. So we really just tried to, I was building and building and building as I was going. And I think looking back, the building process was enormous. Due to the dynamics of the situation, I wasn't able to jump in completely full time. So it was a very tricky balance. And I think that maybe I would have taken a little bit more time for myself, knowing what I know now. But at the end of the day, it always works out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, no. And it sounds like it did, that you had that flexibility to spend so much time with your child, which I think is really important. As therapists, we know how important attachment plays in the role of a child's life. And so that's great that you were able to have all that time and just focus on Saturdays and slowly build, right? That there wasn't a sense of like, oh my goodness, I have to have it full and thriving like immediately, that you could do it over time, because you didn't necessarily have the time as well.
No. And I think it was also pushing limits, where I think that's what has to happen too when you start something brand new. Like you said earlier, we're trained as clinicians, we're not business. And if I had known, I would have taken some business classes. But so there was such a learning curve, and there was a lot of stress that was happening. But it forced me to continue to develop my coping strategies and become more flexible. And so I am so thankful for that. It was very stressful, but it opened up my world, and I would never take it back, even though there was times of like, ugh. But that led me to, know who my support people are, and they were there. And so a very amazing process. It's just making sure I was always looking towards the future. Like, I'm going to start small and then big and big and big. And then now I'm trying to morph it into something different so I can have even more flexibility. Constant growth. Constant growth.
Are you wanting a vacation in paradise? A vacation to rekindle the passion? A vacation without the kids? A vacation where you can learn how to communicate, where you and your partner hear each other and gain insight? Vacation Counseling is your next vacation. Stay in one of our exclusive villas for the ultimate couples retreat. Enjoy dining, boating, and all that South Florida has to offer. Let our counselors guide you through the rest. Vacation Counseling, accepting applications for summer 2020. Visit www.vacationcounseling.com for more information.
Can you speak about that process? Because I do think it's almost like, there's some pruning that has to happen. Sometimes the growth is going in so many different directions that you don't have the brain space to really allocate, or time to allocate each section what it actually needs, and you have to kind of prune back. Can you speak a little bit about your process and how you've been going about doing that?
Sure. At the beginning, of course, I didn't know what to expect. And, being out of the workforce and having a baby, like, you're just a little fuzzy. And so it took me a
Sure.
little while to, get rid of those sea legs and to get really confident again. And I was feeling it. I was really feeling what was happening. And I was noticing the referrals coming in, and it was just word of mouth. Like,
Mm.
I paid attention to the marketing aspect of it, and it didn't seem that's where I didn't want to put my money there. I just wanted to make sure that I was giving the best quality to my clients. And that's how I built. And, making sure I was writing treatment summaries for psychiatrists so they could start to see my work. And,
Mm.
that benefited the client as well as myself. And it benefited the psychiatrist. And that's just one example. So hustling, number one, and
Mm.
doing the extra work.
Yeah.
You really put yourself out there. And what I learned as I was just doing what I do, this is what I believe that quality care is that the referrals just kept coming and coming and coming.
Mhm.
And so then I was like, okay, uh, I'm not afraid of hard work. And so my biggest problem is putting on the brakes. And so I had to pay attention to that. I'm not good at it. I'm still not good at it. I'm getting better. And putting on the brakes, recognizing, where I needed the assistance, and that was billing, because I am taking insurance.
Okay.
So a wonderful person that I know, and her mom had just gone into retirement, and she had some background in regards to medical billing. And so I was still pretty small at that point. So she was able to kind of help me get some systems down, but it was also a release of control,
Yeah.
and which was difficult, but at the same time, I trusted her. So um, I'm so thankful for that opportunity, because I trusted her as a person, and that
Mhm.
no matter what, it was easier for me to release that control. So I had more time. So I
Yeah.
continued to build and take on more people, and it just kept happening. And then I realized I was growing out of my space. And so I expanded my practice in April 2019. I actually moved right next door, the suite next door.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yes. And so I have that connectedness to my colleagues. And I hired somebody, that Jujagal, who's my billing administrator now, who had a lot of experience with medical billing, because it just gets so much.
Yeah.
And you really have to know the ins and outs of things, or you're just going to get swallowed up by the system.
It is so incredibly challenging. I feel like there were two things that as I grew, I was ready to give up, that were scary, but I knew that I couldn't handle it anymore. And one was billing, and the other was phones.
Yes.
Um, uh, but the billing piece, I was like, I can't continue to do this. I would go home on a Friday and try to get as much as I could done Friday night so that I could have my weekend. But a lot of times it would roll over. I'm like, I'm spending
Yes.
anywhere between 7 to 10 hours just managing billing, because it's not just submitting the claims, it's then reconciling the other claims that come in and going back and saying, hey, they didn't pay me for that. They denied this. And then you're like, okay, well, now I have to put that on the list of, got to call them up and figure out why they didn't and how to fix it.
Yes.
And it just became grueling. And you realize this is time I actually could be spending doing client work or working in a different capacity in the business. So that's great that you have somebody in-house doing that for you.
Oh, it was the best decision. I mean, it was so wonderful to have my first. It was ladder approach, and hiring somebody that I didn't necessarily know as a person, was, again, it was a different release of control, but I had to do it if I wanted to grow. But again, I have specific qualities that I expect. Um, if somebody's going to be working for me, they have to be able to embody the values that I provide in a
Mhm.
therapeutic setting, even though they may have a different role. The level of professionalism, the level of quality work, and the thoroughness. And so that was something that guided me. And I've had her for a year, and I can't tell you
Mm.
how thankful I am to for her, because that just helped me get to a bigger point and allow me to like just kind of feel this process. Okay, what's next, and where does this go? And I wish there was a concrete step-by-step plan, and I'm sure that somebody has created that. But I know I probably couldn't have gone by that. I would have looked at it and said, that's nice, but I don't operate like that. I wish I did. Life would be so much easier.
Yeah.
But I just kind of like, I had a visualization of what I wanted. And I just kind of felt the process moving forward and where I was. And it's been extremely uncomfortable due to the lack of control and the lack of concrete step 1, step 2, step 3. But I'm just trusting myself and staying connected with myself.
Yeah.
And it seems like things continue to fall into place. And if something is off, I create a new system that is more effective, and having that non-judgmental approach to my business development.
Absolutely. I think it's actually very freeing to go, okay, this isn't working. I don't have to keep it. I can change it and like make it something new. Where in a system, like in an agency, I remember working where I was doing in-home, and I had to produce two separate two separate itemized reports for like mileage, for the mileage that I drove. I'm like, why do I have to write this in two different ways? This is such a waste of my time, right? There's this level of inefficiency, but in an agency, you can't change it because
that's what they need to do.
That's what they needed. But in our agency, in our practice, we can change it so that it can be more efficient and more effective, and we can work smarter and not harder.
Yes. And I think too of keeping it small. Like I have 2 really great therapists working underneath my supervision, and I really want to keep things small so I can keep the quality and keep the systems as efficient as possible. Because that's where my headspace is right now. I'm not thinking macro. I'm thinking very small. And so I got to keep it that way to keep things good for everybody. I want a life that I can love my job and it be a healthy relationship with my job.
Yeah.
I'm not here all the time, but I need to provide that for them as well, not just myself. And so I have to create systems that allow that.
Definitely. Definitely.
Until I get this mastered, I got to keep things small.
I agree. And it's a work in progress, right? Like you're just doing the steps. Okay, I've gotten this part, I've mastered that. Okay, it's time to take another step forward. What else can I do? What else can I do? And it's a constant refinement with the systems, I think. Yeah. And so how long did it take you to work up to a place where you're like, I really need other therapists to help me support the referrals that are coming into my practice. I just can't take on any more clients. Like my caseload's too big.
I was actually just thinking about that this morning, driving into work. I think, so I started May in 2014, and here we are 2019, the end of the year. And I expanded officially in April with this new office. I think I waited too long.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it was just such a conflict because I was so comfy cozy, and I just loved my work environment, and I loved the girls that I were associating with and my clients. And I was just trying to make it all work because the overhead was something that was really enticing because it was super low. But I think if I could go back, I'd probably do it a year earlier. Just so it would have saved me. It would have offered me more time for myself. But again, like you live and you learn. And so I don't take it back by any means, but I think I should have taken that risk. But honestly, I wasn't ready, willing and able to take that risk. And I need to make sure that my confidence is sturdy with where I'm at. And so I don't take it back, but I wish my confidence was where it needed to be a year prior. But so here I am. It's been a little over 5 years, and I have 2 wonderful therapists and a billing administrator. And so that's the amount of time that it took me.
But that's a great place to be 5 years in, right? Like that's a wonderful place to be. Some therapists don't make it 5 years, right? They close
Yeah,
their
I'm very proud of
doors.
what's happened, but I'm also thankful for, I know that it's my business, it's my practice, but I know that I recognize people have helped me along the way back, undergraduate school, like
Mhm.
the mentors in high school. Like I really try to keep that in mind
Mhm.
to remain humble in this growing adventure, because there's so many people that have contributed to me, which has contributed
Mm.
to what I'm able to do now, including my clients. I've learned from every single one of them.
That's so true. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was talking with somebody else earlier, and we were talking about the exchange that happens, right? There's always an exchange, um, and if we're open to receiving it, then that allows growth and forward momentum.
Mhm.
So it sounds like your business was ready to take on more, but you, as the clinician and the owner, were not, and you didn't take on more, which is probably a good thing, right? There's a certain awareness of what we're able to handle and ready to handle. And I think, especially as new business owners, it is so difficult and scary to take the next step of hiring somebody to do billing, of hiring an assistant to answer your phones or help you with other administrative tasks, and taking on other therapists to see clients on, because that person's also going to be a reflection of you, the quality of care that you provide, the work that you provide. And it is scary because it's a lot of hard work and energy that goes into building a practice. So I can understand and appreciate that hesitance of like, I need more time to get there. But what were the signs? Like, how did you know that your business was ready? And how did you know when you were ready?
I remember distinctly. Of course, I was always in my thinking process. However, um, the leap, I remember I was in Jessica's office, and Juju was in there doing some billing things. Jessica was so kind. She wasn't working that day and allowed me to use her office as I was seeing clients in mine. And I was on the floor handling charts and stuff. And I was just like, like I just wanted to bust. And it was such a visceral experience. And I'm like, I got to do something. I need more space. Like I can't try to keep doing what I'm doing in this container. And there's nothing wrong with that. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a physical reaction. I'll never forget it. And then within 2 weeks, it was, looking for affordable space, which is not easy to come by.
No, it's not.
That was like another whole process. And I so appreciate being able to move right next door to my colleagues in an affordable space, because I don't want to raise my rates.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to raise my rates to the point where people can't access mental health.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as a business owner, we still have to have a decent profit and loss report at the end of the month.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it all has to balance out. So that was one of the first steps after I had that visceral experience. Then it was, okay, but what does this mean? And what is
Mm-hmm.
this next step? So that was that. And my husband, I've been very fortunate too, because he has some business background, and he was able to guide me in certain ways, or at least talk back and forth about what's a good idea, what's not, the pros and cons of things.
Mm.
He's 1,000% supportive, but I didn't want to take too much risk initially, that first expansion.
Yeah, of course not. I think it's already a risk to expand, right? And then we want to make an informed decision based on financial projections that will be able to support that. Because once the scale starts to tip, you can't be of service, right? If you can't pay your lease for your office, you can't be of service. If you can't pay your car payment, you can't be of service. If you can't pay your own insurance, health insurance. Like if you get sick, you can't be of service. So we have to be attuned to the finances of the business part of what we're doing. And I think that's a big challenge for most therapists, because we do want to help and we do want people to be able to access help. Yet at the same time, we have to be able to pay the bills that it
Absolutely.
costs to run the business. It's
Such a balance.
frustrating.
It is, and it's a little bit, it's a little bit of fear, and I think it's healthy fear. If we didn't have
Yeah,
any fear, we'd be making impulsive choices or being too reactionary. So I appreciate the fear, but at the same time, it's difficult, and it's having the proper coping mechanisms. And I guess that's why I appreciate the profession that I'm in, because I'm, spewing this stuff all day long. So it's like, okay, your turn, Amie.
right?
It's an easy way to remind yourself that, like, staying connected. You can't talk the talk and not walk the walk. And there's days that it's easier than others, but big picture perspective, it's making sure that you're taking care and using the proper coping strategies to
Ab-
deal with this expansion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so how did you go about, okay, now you know you need the bigger space and you need therapists to help you, or at least one therapist to help you. How did you go about the process of finding somebody to come in and work under you? Because again, that is a very intimidating process.
Mhm. Well, I think that as I had been, like, in the private practice world, I was networking and really trying to recognize the expertise outside of my own office and connecting with other professionals and just building those relationships and learning from them about what they do, whether they do something similar or something different. And so that really helped because um, Audra Boxma, who is a behavioralist in Naples,
Mm-hmm.
Florida, she came across a wonderful intern, and she says, I can offer her this much, but hey, can you offer her this much? And I was like, so it fell into my lap, and this person is like, I really trust and appreciate the working relationship that I have with Audra. So it was kind of like things fell into place in that situation, where we both could help each other, but we could also help the person that's just coming out of school.
That's
And
awesome.
yes, and the other, I had an intern that was referred by Dr. Mike Rizzo, and he runs the Rainforest Camp. And so it was like that working relationship. He had met her through, I don't even know how, and he was like, hey, why don't you touch base with her? And we met, and it worked out. So it's just like happenstance.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's being open.
Mm-hmm.
That was new for me, like just being open to, sure, let's try it, let me talk to this person, let's see how I feel about it, let me hear the logic behind it and move forward. And another wonderful therapist, that this is like complete luck, she is finishing up her graduate studies in an online program from Indiana, and moved to this area, and was just, hey, here I am. And I talked to her and I really liked her. There's certain things that
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for, and I'm not
Sure.
looking for necessarily, skills are beautiful and wonderful, but I need the core. I need the core of the kind of professional that I want to be in my office. And so that's what I was really listening for. Skills can be learned. And that's really
Mm-hmm.
my job, to make sure that that is happening, the training and the
Mm-hmm.
supervision. So a lot of it's, I have to say, a little bit's been luck, and wonderful support from other professionals that have been helping me along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, but again, it's always being in tune to, okay, this is how it is first. I mean, just like any relationship, I like this feels good, but then constantly assessing, is this continuing in the forward direction that I need it
Mm-hmm.
to continue to develop the practice that embodies what I need it to have. And so making decisions along the way, according to that groundwork, that
Mm-hmm.
foundation that I'm trying to build.
Yeah. And so the clinicians that are working with you, Do they carry the same size caseload, or are their caseloads smaller than yours? How do you balance that out?
Very slow. And I didn't have them come on right away. Everything's been such a gradual process because I want to mold and modify. And I guess that's maybe a sense of control where I just want to make sure, because they are under my reputation that I have
Mm-hmm.
worked very hard to build.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which in turn has made me have more. Like, it would have been so much easier just to send referrals their way, but I don't think that was the right thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I continue to take referrals, and slowly, Rose Ballier, she is my graduate student that's just about to graduate. So she's been my clinical administrative assistant, where she's doing the initial phone calls. So I've started to get control there. So she's getting great experience connecting and assessing on the phone, staffing with me, and then I'm seeing how she does. And then I'm giving her certain cases and seeing how she does, and she's doing a beautiful job. She's so very self-aware. And so that's really, I'm just kind of assessing as I go,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like what we do with a client. I mean, it's beautiful to develop a concrete treatment plan, but people are people and they're complex. And so we kind of have to,
Yes.
it's very similar. Not that they're my clients, but I use a similar approach to know how much they're ready for,
Mm-hmm.
but also getting their feedback. I want to know where their comfort zone is and why that is, why their comfort zone's where it is. So it's a teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really big on team because I have my experience, but those girls have already taught me stuff, and I want to be better. So, and they want to be better too. So let's all put our strengths in a bucket and swish it all around and see how we can help people.
Yeah. I was talking with somebody earlier, and this topic of like collaboration came up, and how important it is, and how in the work that we're doing, there really isn't any competition amongst the team of people that are operating their own individual practices. It's really about collaboration, because there's only so many people in a day, in a week, that one therapist can be in front of, but there's a lot more people that need the help. I think I'm going to sneeze, so excuse me if I do.
No problem. Take your time.
Excuse me. So like building those relationships with the people within your practice, but outside your practice too, because oftentimes people come in and you know what, they're not a good fit. And in order for them to get the help that they need, we need to know, like, go through our little Rolodex of who do I know that does this, that's going to check off the boxes for them that I can push their way. And hopefully that person has availability and openings. I feel like oftentimes the people that are really good don't have openings. They're like
Yes.
really full. So it's a constant getting out there and collaborating with other people.
And it also brings that sense of unity that I think it's a basic need, that we need that sense of belongingness. I really, when I was working in the other suite and as this suite, like, even if we're not in this, we all have separate businesses or whatever it may be, like, we're still together. We're social creatures.
Mm-hmm.
We need to know that somebody has our back, or whatever it may be. I like the environment, and it's creating the environment that is a healthy environment, because what we do on a daily basis is really heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be very draining, and to make sure that the people in the office are a healthy match for us to, this one is super goofy and can make us laugh. And yes, we need a goofball in the office because things get serious. We need people, a very diverse group of people that can get along and work as a team to support each other through this very meaningful but challenging work.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, and it's one that I've heard from clinicians that have worked in private practice for a long time, but where they formed their practice was in isolation and they never grew to a point where they added on other clinicians, and they end up leaving private practice and going back into some other work because of that. So I think that is a really good point that you're making, and it's important for us if we don't have the good fortune of having suite mates or being in an office space where we have that ability to collaborate with our colleagues. How do we create that for ourselves outside so we don't feel so disconnected and we don't feel like we're working in isolation? I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. What do you think has been most influential in helping you keep going when things are difficult? Because it does get difficult, it does get challenging, and overwhelming sometimes, being the primary therapist and you're holding a large caseload, but then you're also now overseeing other people's work and managing the administration of a business. There's like so many different hats. Um, what is it that you do, or what resource has helped you to be able to most effectively manage that?
I would say two things, like internal resources and external resources. So my internal resources, I think it's just how I'm wired. I was an athlete growing up. I'm just a very driven person. And
Mm-hmm.
so my wiring helps. And going through my sport from age 5 and all the way through college as a senior, that was extremely, it built my confidence to know that you can build things, and it takes a long time and there's a lot of ups and downs, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the big picture and
Right.
really everything you gain from that. External resources and support. I think it's just really paying attention to the positive
Mm-hmm.
and knowing where I want to be. I want to
Right.
be able to do this profession that it just seems like that's why I'm here on this earth. Like it just fits. It just really fits. But I'm kind of maybe greedy. I want it all. Like I want to be able to be home with my family and make dinner and maybe pick up the kid from school, or go to his field trips. But I also want to be in the space that I've been in since I was 20 something. So I'm greedy. That's, yeah. And I have to create something that allows me to do both. And so keeping the end in mind,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm headed. And all of these ups and downs is leading me there to create systems that work and have great relationships with quality professionals that have the same morals and values that I do. And I'm helping them, they're helping me, and we're helping the community.
Mm-hmm.
So I really try to keep about the big picture perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, big
So
picture perspective, not get
big,
stuck on the little stuff.
not get stuck. Yeah, that's important because there's so many little things that we could get
Absolutely.
sucked down the drain from.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so what do you have in plans? Is there anything else that you have in the works in terms of the growth that you're doing business wise, projects, anything like that?
I think I actually, I have in this new office space, I have an art room, and it's attached to a group room, and I really want to continue to expand. And I think I'm a little bit annoying because I keep changing things, like, oh, I don't like how this looks, I want it to fit. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
constantly changing that space around to be most conducive to what we need,
Mm-hmm.
and to know how everything fits. So I'm still like settling into my space.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, there's continued growth. But like I said earlier, I have it's very important to me that children my son goes to Collier County School, so that's why I'm saying Collier, and it's smaller than Lee. But I believe Lee, Collier County. It's so important to me that we develop a really effective and adaptive curriculum with mental health professionals performing these services in the school. I don't even know what that looks like, but continuing to do the work with children and families and learning what is really truly needed. I believe empathy is so important. We need self-awareness. There's just the psychoeducation piece. If we had that going on, just like math and reading, just as important as sight words and all of that, like, and it just be so ingrained. I went to my child's school for bring your parents to school morning, and during the morning activities through the video, they were doing deep breathing, and I was like, oh, this is so awesome. I love it. And
That's amazing.
I want to see what's actually happening. I need to get a little bit outside my office and really see what's happening in the schools and see where there's holes, and how, gather some more professionals that have a like-minded vision and put us all together and see what we can do to implement. Not that what's happening now is not good enough. It's just that we need more. And these teachers need more support because mental health will impede learning. And
yes.
And so I really believe that mental health is the foundation of health. And if we can continue with the psychoeducation with children, it's only going to transfer to the parents. And this is not therapy. This is just learning about, boundaries, and that anger is a secondary emotion. There's always a more vulnerable emotion underneath. Like, just that can make a world of difference.
Right.
And
understanding how the brain works.
Yes. So cool once you connect all the dots. And I think that's where creativity, I get excited about it, because creativity, when I figure out how somebody processes information, I can use my creativity to help them make connections. Because when they can make connections, they can leave this office and then do something with it. Typically, why people come in, they're discombobulated in one way or another. It's all mushed together like a ball of yarn, and we're organizing things to understand it, and then knowing how to move forward with whatever the issue may be.
Yeah, getting them unstuck.
Yes, yeah. And so creative approaches and working with the psychoeducation with children is definitely important. But I'm also very loyal to Neve Connaught and Rose Ballier, who are the therapists that are working underneath me, to really work on supporting them in their growth, because they got such a solid foundation, and I need to make sure that I'm giving the time that they deserve, because they're going to be such a great thing. They already are. And spending that time, I guess what I've learned too is bringing them on. I'm more, oh wow, I kind of know some stuff that has helped build my.
That's so true. When you're mentoring and like supervising others, you're like, oh wow, I guess I do know a little bit more than I give myself credit for.
And when you're teaching, you're making things more linear and more concrete. And so I really feel that focusing a lot of my time with them is going to help me create what I want to be doing next. So that's kind of really where I'm at. I couldn't give you anything linear or
that's okay.
So we'll see what happens, but that's really where my focus is.
I love the idea of developing a curriculum to bring into the school system. And it made me think about what you were saying about the big picture, right? If we're looking at solving a larger scale problem, why aren't we developing a solution to implement at the beginning, right? Well, that solution is the psychoed piece, going into the schools, making that part of the child's full education and understanding from the beginning, not just a little snippet here and there, but really fully integrating that into the whole process from pre-K all the way to graduation and beyond.
Absolutely. And I also believe that, our teachers are so overburdened with everything that they have to do, and they have the most important job. Other than parenting, teaching children how to learn is everything. And they are required to do the social emotional snippets, and it's almost just not fair. First of
Mhm.
all, they didn't go to school to be trained for mental health. They were trained to be a teacher, and that's where
Right.
their expertise is. And they have to take from something else in order to throw in the social emotional. And it's just doesn't. If we can have some mental health professionals to do that part of it, and then they're collaborating with the teachers, oh my goodness, like we're supporting the teachers as well as supporting the children and the parents. Like it just seems like a win-win.
I 100% agree. 100%. It would make a world of difference. And hopefully, with some of the legislative changes that are happening and how we're thinking about mental health and adding different mental health services into the schools, maybe that will change and provide an opportunity for something like what you're talking about. I know that in both of our counties, they did add funding. I think they added funding for the entire state of Florida in terms of having different feet on the floor in the schools and being able to assess children in crisis and provide some service. But it's not the same benefit and impact as a project of what you're thinking about.
Absolutely. I actually had a young lady that moved to another state. She's in high school, and she was experiencing a few bouts of panic and anxiety just due to all the transition. And in that state, they had such an amazing program where these children could come in. They had a mentor to talk to. They were able to give her resources like in school. So it was almost like a little mini psychoed session in school because she was going through these challenges, and
Mm,
then there was follow-up. And it was almost like we need to find out what's working in other states and other counties, because so many people are doing so many good things. We don't need to
yeah.
reinvent the wheel. But like you said, like everything's kind of coming together where people are recognizing the absolute necessity of mental health, that it's not just a bonus, it's a necessity. And
Yeah.
we need to see what's working in other places as well, and bring it back to our area and see, how our area can adapt and what we need to mold to make sure our kids feel supported so they can be clear and learn.
Yeah. Right. If we're dysregulated emotionally, that turns off the logical, concrete, sequential part of the brain, so
Right.
they can't learn. And so if we can just, deliver that message over and over, like
Yeah.
hopefully,
It's
you
gonna
know,
happen.
it'll be like, okay, we get it. We see why this part is important. Makes sense now. It's not just a behavior problem, right? The child isn't just being bad.
No, or lazy. There's so much more to it.
Yeah. So very cool. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share with listeners today that you think would be helpful or inspiring for those getting ready to like launch themselves out into private practice, or they're just starting off in their practice journey? Anything that you think would be beneficial?
I think since I was 20 some years old, 21 years old, and I remember doing this activity, and I don't know where I was at the time, but they asked us to, 20 years from now, envision, or 10 years, I can't remember, what do you hope to be in your career? And it must have been a college activity. And I drew it out, and I will never forget like what I drew.
Mm,
And it has come to life. And I'm not saying that I'm not promoting the secret here. If you see it, it will happen. But it's part of the equation, because there's so many more pieces to the puzzle. There's the grit, there's the hard work, there's the the timing of things.
mhm.
Timing is everything as well. But really envisioning like what you really want, and then being courageous enough to do what you need to do to make that happen.
Mhm.
I There's these little things that I don't forget, and I think that helped guide me too. I remember I had a friend, first year of graduate school, first semester, I was like, oh, I'm ripping my hair out, like this is so hard, I don't know how to do this. And my friend said to me, but Amie, this is what you wanted. And I was like, oh, Darn it, like,
Yeah.
that's right. That's what I wanted. So be quiet, push through the hard stuff, and just embrace it. Like, yeah, it's going to be hard, but it's worth it.
Mhm.
So it's also like paying attention to whether it's a friend or, somebody on TV that says this one liner, like, listen, like, be open to guidance, be
Mhm.
open to opportunities. And, if it's not a good opportunity after you try it, you move on.
Yeah.
Stay connected, but be very open and not being afraid to take your time. I do notice that because, we have to make money and we have to live off of money. That's how our system works. But not being afraid to take it slow,
Mhm.
because in this profession, we need to be very ready personally and professionally to be where we need to be
Mhm.
to do our best work. And when we try to rush that process, we may fall a few more times than we need to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we can enter with a little bit of preparation and some savings,
Yes.
I highly advise, like when I talk about and lecture about opening private practice, I always talk about the financial piece of like having enough money saved up so that you aren't becoming impacted emotionally and psychologically to the point that you can't hold the space for the people that come in.
Right.
Right. But that's just a little preparation
Mhm.
to ensure that success. And then it allows you to ease into it too. You're like, it's okay because
Yes.
I've done my due diligence. I'm prepared.
So we're not having traumatic responses during the process, because
Mhm.
that's, the financial
Right.
piece that's how the world turns around. That's how we
Hmm.
eat. And
Right.
it's our survival. So in order to not to feel in a trauma state, we have to do our due diligence, whatever that may be, and have our supports in place.
Hmm.
Yeah. So then we
Yeah.
can be open to opportunities and to the
Mhm.
ups and downs of the learning process.
Right. When the person doesn't show up because they forgot a session or they late cancel, like
Yes,
that's all right. I got this. I
absolutely.
I don't have to worry about it. That's okay. I got it.
That's right. And I can take this opportunity to read something or just take a breather and do some
Yep.
meditation, like being
Mhm.
open to what I can use this time for now.
Mhm. Yeah. Very cool. So, if our listeners wanted to reach out to you and connect with you and find more about your practice and the services that you provide, where should they go?
Okay, so my website, which is in the works right now of revamping, is aimcounselinggroup.com. So it's AIM group counseling. Oh, excuse me, aimcounselinggroup.com. The office number is 239-221-6370. And my email is Amie, AMIE, at aimcounselinggroup.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today and share about your experience with the listeners. I hope that they find all the nuggets of wisdom that you put out there about this process. And yeah, I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much. This was a wonderful opportunity to reflect.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Creative Psychotherapist. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For show notes, downloads, and additional resources, head over to the website at www.creativeclinicianscorner.com.